Well, after promising never to waste a day in office, the new Albanese government's been quick to reshape the senior ranks of the Canberra Public Service. On day one, you recall, he moved on the former head of Prime Minister and Cabinet Phil Gaetjens, and then brought in former head of Melbourne University Glyn Davis, a long-time ally of Kevin Rudd. Well, yesterday, 4 more changes at the top of key departments and a new chief of the Defence Force likely in coming days. Joining me now from Melbourne, one of the best in the business, foreign editor at The Australian, Greg Sheridan. Well, Greg, what do you make of all those changes? You know, you change the government, you change the country. Well, you change the public service, you make sure they're on the same page as you, and away we go. What do you make of the shake-up?
Well, they're reasonable, Peter, up till now. That's not to say the people who left deserve to go or anything, but I think the government's entitled to have people it feels comfortable with. I know Glyn Davis pretty well. He's a very capable guy, very, very good guy. Jan Adams will be a perfectly respectable Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. I mean, they're mainstream appointments. I would be much more concerned if they moved on any of the heads of the intelligence agencies or anything like that. And in a pre-election interview with me, Albanese more or less assured me he wouldn't do that. So I'd be very unhappy. I'd be very concerned if that happened. On the Defence Force, I don't think it matters much who the Chief of the Defence Force is, but the Defence Force really needs leadership from the government. And, you know, I think Miles is now getting to the point where he's just about travelled overseas enough for the early weeks. He needs to get home and start sorting out all the capability decisions that he's got to do. Some of the early travel was obviously necessary. I think some of the current travel is a bit more equivocal.
It's interesting, these moves yesterday all reported very favourably, but I remember when Tony Abbott took office in 2013 and he moved around some of the heads, particularly the Treasury head, there was a hue and cry, a lot of outrage. So, you know, I'm a bit surprised at the double standard. Labor moves the public servants around and it's greeted with accolade. When the Liberal side does it, it's terrible.
Well, you're absolutely right, Peter, but I suspect you were being ironic when you said you were surprised at the double standard. I mean, this is an absolutely standard double standard, isn't it? You know, so I mean, there was absolutely nothing wrong with Tony Abbott's departmental secretary appointments, and I think he later brought Michael Thorley in to head PM&C. I guess that's a bit analogous to someone like Glyn Davis. But as I say, it's the government which makes the policy, not the public servants. And on the military, I want the government to start moving on all the capability stuff that it's got to get moving. The military itself is, you know, completely caught up in woke symbolism at the moment. Whoever's there, you know, the rainbow morning teas will be back and everything. But I want them to get cracking on the hard things, which they promised to do in opposition, which was to hasten the acquisition of real capability quickly. I think Miles is kind of wasting his time at the Commonwealth heads of government. There won't be any other defence ministers there. Surely there was a minister for pots and pans they could have sent to that. And even going to India, it's a good thing to do, but better to get your defence policy sorted out first and then do some of this discretionary travel. I mean, he had to go to the Shangri-La dialogue. That's fair enough. But now they're doing things which I think are less necessary.
Spot on, Greg. And I have to say, you know, India, great, but not an immediate priority. Someone else could have gone in and out of Africa, which is a logistical nightmare for a Deputy Prime Minister anyway. There's not enough in modern government, and I'll say this to both sides, of ministers with their feet under a desk. You know, enough time left in the diary, not that constant churn of meetings, to read the papers, ask the questions, bring the experts up from your department, drill into the detail, become a subject matter expert in where your portfolio is up to. And once you make decisions at a cabinet level or what you take through the election as government policy, to actually get it implemented. Because a mere announcement, putting a press release out, doesn't actually get anything done. That's just the very start of the process. And I reckon the best ministers are those that sort of just, you know, keep the whip hand on the department to deliver an outcome. Do you think when he goes to Madrid next week for these NATO meetings that Anthony Albanese should slide into Ukraine? I suspect he might even be considering this. They've been a bit light on in detail, and it's not something for security reasons they're going to tell us until perhaps he was leaving Kyiv. But should he go?
Well, Peter, I'll answer that in just one second. Just to reinforce your final point, you know, Linda Reynolds was one of the most ineffective defence ministers we've ever had, and she loved the travel. She loved the international diplomacy of it. And that is, of course, a way for the Defence Department to manage a minister, to keep them off doing all that sort of rubbish so they don't take any decisions. Look, on Kyiv, I am 1,000,000% with Ukraine and all that, but we are not central to this dispute. The government has had a massive amount of travel just lately. I won't object if Albanese goes, because it will be to express solidarity with a democratic nation under invasion from a totalitarian nation. So if he goes, I won't criticise him for it. But, you know, the government has done a massive amount of travel in its first few weeks, most of it justified. I think even going to the NATO summit is broadly justified. There's nothing of substance that will come of going to Kyiv. It's just a matter of symbolism. And no one could accuse the new government of being, you know, soft on Russia or something. It's not as if they've got to demonstrate that they really are against what Russia's doing. So I would reinforce what you said a minute ago, really. Now that they've had to do all this travel, I'd like them to come home and get on with the business of governing, really.
All right. Let's go to New South Wales, where there's been a bit of a difficult week there for the Liberal government. An independent panel has recommended today that the former New South Wales Labor Attorney General be appointed the next Commissioner of ICAC, the Independent Commission Against Corruption in New South Wales. Now, the current incumbent is a QC. I am a bit reluctant to see a former politician, you know, someone who's been involved in party politics, put in charge of this body, because even if he's straight down the line in this very important role, he'll be very much alive to perceptions that he's playing sort of games for his mates or against his old opponents.
Well, I think you're right, Peter. I mean, I know John Hatzistakos a bit, and he's a very good guy. And I think individually, I mean, he would probably therefore bend over backwards to show he wasn't biased. But you know, I'm very uneasy with the way ICAC has gone in New South Wales, and maybe it's a reflection on how badly it's been run, that they've got to get it out of the hands of these interfering lawyers and put it in the hands of an intelligent politician who at least will understand how the world operates. But I think it would be better if it were in the hands of a person completely disinterested in politics with a much narrower black letter law view of what they should do. And I think the whole ICAC structure in New South Wales is dysfunctional and should be reformed. I mean, its ambit is far too wide, it's far too ambitious, it seeks far too much publicity. It's had some crazy results, like declaring Nick Greiner was corrupt, which was overturned in the court, but only after his premiership was destroyed and New South Wales politics was deprived of its last reforming premier, really. I suppose you could maybe make a case for Mike Baird. But I think ICAC has actually done quite a lot of damage to New South Wales politics, but no government is game to reform it. And I agree with you in general about giving it to a former politician, but oddly enough, I think the lawyers have done such a bad job, they almost make a case for a politician instead of a lawyer.
That's a backhanded compliment in some respects there. Greg, Sheridan, thank you for your time.